Today we're going to look at some ancient Native American locations in the Newark, Ohio area. Newark, Ohio is in central Ohio, east of Columbus. In the Book of Mormon time frame, it was the one of the key areas of activity for the Hopewell civilization. The Hopewell, who I think were the Nephite population from the Book of Mormon. The Newark, Ohio area has some of the most famous artifacts that may relate to the Book of Mormon and also some of the most famous earthworks that were created and in the time frame of the Book of Mormon. And we're going to look at some of the sites in that area. Turning to Google Earth, so we're looking at this Ohio area, in particular this central Ohio area. Columbus is over here in the center, and then to the east of Columbus, you have several locations that we'll talk about today. Right. So in particular, here are the Newark earthworks. This is the Great Circle and the Octagon, which are quite famous. And then in that area, there are two fortifications that we'll talk about, Fortified Hill and Glenford Fort, which both kind of fit the fortifications, places of resort that were described in the Book of Alma. And then there's also a Flint location, of a source of flint called the Flint Ridge. And we'll go ahead and take a look at that location first. As you can see, it's not too far from the Newark. It's about 10 miles of walking towards the Newark earthworks. And we'll take a look at the Flint Ridge location. A couple of websites that have more information about that Flint Ridge area if you're interested. The Ohio History Connection has a thing on the site, the Flint Ridge Ancient Quarries and Nature Preserve. And as it indicates here, it's just a preserve where there's the ancient pits left by Native Americans who are quarrying the flint. The flint located here in this area is sort of unique rainbow-colored flint, which was highly prized. So it says 8-mile long vein of high-quality flint in the area, and that shows that there's hundreds of quarry pits and lots of the working of the flint. And this type of flint is easily identifiable because of the way it looks, and it's been found throughout the eastern United States. And that's because the Hopewell culture, who I think were the Nephites, were spread throughout the eastern United States. And then at this site, which is the Ancient Ohio Trail site, it has a little bit more on this Flint Ridge location. As it describes, the flint here is beautiful, hard, sharp, rainbow colored, just close to the surface. So that's why it's been mined and used for thousands of years. I do think before the Nephites were using it, I think that likely other cultures, for example, the Jaredites, were likely using it. And the question is, why would you use this flint if you have a knowledge of metal? And it's clear that not only from the Book of Mormon we know that the Nephites knew how to work metal, but also from archaeology, the Hopewell culture did have some metal working, and they have copper, for example, copper axes and things like that. Why then would you switch and use flint? And I think that the answer is because of the easiness of it and the level of sharpness that they could obtain. So what the flint that they have, it can be, when it's chipped, can be made especially sharp, as sharp as a surgeon's scalpel, it says in the museum there. And so it was just a really easy way to get something very functional, very sharp, and great for tools and weapons and so forth. So this Flint Ridge, as it indicates, it's about 10 miles from Newark, so it's just a day's walk from Newark. They think that maybe the location of the Newark earthworks is because it's near this Flint Ridge, which was sort of this treasure location. The Newark area is sort of the first closest large flat um, river plain nearby that's sort of a rolling hills area. And then, as it says here, built on the closest flat river terrace to the Flint Ridge, so it may have been chosen because of that. Here's some example of what the Flint looks like um, in the wild. All right, and then just you can to show you why it was prized. Let me just show you how the colors look. So here you can see pieces that are worked by it just come out with very interesting rainbow type colors. And when it's heated in particular, the colors come out and you get beautiful pieces. Like, see, for example, look at those. Look how beautiful those are. Okay, now this particular site is focused more on the flint as a current gem. It's actually the Ohio State gemstone is this rainbow type flint from this area near the Newark earthworks, and how it's prized even today. And this site has a pretty good level of detail in terms of the flint. And as we'll go down there, what it'll say is that of the Native American cultures, in particular the Hopewell culture, in that Book of Mormon timeframes were those who used it most. It talks about the fractures and why it makes such a good tool with a sharp point. And then the location, the particular flint here is unique. Okay, so as it says, Ohio's most notable flint occurrence is this Flint Ridge, in that it kind of describes how they're found, which is in these relatively thick seams of it at the Flint Ridge site. You can see some of the pits that were used are not that exotic. They're just little pits dug in the ground where they're harnessing, sourcing the flint. It says it's an 8-mile long location. And then, as it says, it was used most extensively by the Hopewell culture, which dates to the 100 BC to 500 CE time frame. So I do think in terms of the Book of Mormon, this was after the Nephites moved up and joined with the Mulekites in that 100 BC time frame. They lived together, in my opinion, in that Ohio area, and this is where you then have this particular type of flint spread out and used throughout the eastern United States. All right, now other locations in that Newark area include the fortifications. Let's take a look at that. So as indicated back in the Google map, so you have the Newark earthworks here, you have the Flint Ridge location here. There are two fortifications that sort of fit the type of place of resort that were built by Captain Moroni. It fits to the right time frame. We're going to look at both of these. This one, Glenford Fort, is southeast of Newark by about 10 to 15 miles. And then the other one was this fortified hill near Granville, Ohio, and just as if a handful of miles, maybe 5 miles west of the Newark earthworks. In a previous presentation I did related to the earthworks, I did slides on each of these. So this is the fortified hill that's just to the west of the Newark earthworks, and it was on a high hill, and they built walls that sort of fit the description from Alma, walls around the edge of the top of the hill, so that attackers would have to go up, ascend the hill, and then there's the walls around the edge. The walls were about 8 to 10 feet high, and it was built to encompass about an 18-acre area. And then there was one location where you could have sort of an easy ascent up with a doorway, and then otherwise it was steep. And this was located just to the west of the Newark earthworks. This valley around the Newark area was a populated area. Okay, and then the other one south of the Newark location is the Glenford Fort. And so this is southeast, about 15 miles southeast of Newark. And it's another hill, and it's sort of a flat topped hill. And near the top of this flat top hill is a 40-acre area. This is what it looks like currently. The top is still actually sort of plowed and maintained, while the sloped sides are hard to maintain, so they're just allowed to be tree covered. But this flat topped hill, and then they built walls around the edge of it. So you had this fortified 40-acre flat topped hill. And it's called the Glenford Fort. So I said 40 acres. Apparently it was 24 acres. So the fortification encompassed 24 acres. So it's about a 1 mile long wall. This is unusual in that the walls was not made just of piled earth, but was actually used of piled stones. You can see these individuals. At this point, it's all fallen down, but you can still see some of the stones that made up the wall that they're standing on. Currently, the wall is only 3 to 6 feet high, 20 feet wide. Likely, more anciently, it was taller and less wide, but over time is now 20 feet wide and 3 to 6 feet tall. There's been carbon dating that fits the Right Book of Mormon timeframes. Again, it's about 15 miles southeast of the Newark earthworks. It could have been a place of resort. For that, it's sort of an ideal location for that place of resort. If we go back to Google Earth and take a look at that Glenford Fort, I'll show you the location. So again, this is just southeast of the Newark earthworks, south of this flint source, which is good for the weapons. And there's currently a preserve there, right here. And then which has a little trail to it, and then this is where the fortification was, and that's what it currently looks like. And I'll go ahead and hit the 3D so you can see the slope. Sorry. So you can see it's you have the sloped hill. There was a more slow ascent location, and that's the hill. Okay, and then the next thing to look at in this area, which is unique, is the Great Stone Mound. Now, this Great Stone Mound is no longer really seen or accessible, but it was a mound sort of shaped like a pyramid, built with stacked stones. As it got to be between 40 to 50 feet high, most people think about 50 feet high. Let me go ahead and show you a drawing that was made of it. So it was about 50 feet high, just of piled loose stones. It's no longer there because the stones were taken and used in the building of a reservoir. But the site is famous because it's the location. So first of all, it's famous because outside of Mexico, it's the largest stone, largest type pyramid built with stones outside of Mexico. And but then the other reason that it's famous is that it is the location where the famous Decalogue stone was found. We won't do we won't really go into the Newark earthworks here or the Decalogue stone here, because both of those are topics that are big enough that really require their own video. But I'll show you the Decalogue stone and the Newark Holy Stones. This is the Decalogue stone here. And this is a stone that was found in that stone mound. So this stone mound, a mound built with stones, ended up covering a coffin, a burial. So you can imagine who was this that, they did this level of a burial for him, but there was sort of a coffin burial and then covered over, and then and then the mounds piled up. I'll just note that for this stone mound, they have been able to gather some of the wood from that coffin and carbon date it. And it carbon dates to between 85 AD and 135 AD. Let me go ahead and show you that. So this is just in the Journal of Ohio Archaeology. They did a radiocarbon date for the wooden burial platform that was in that stone mound, and the carbon dating came out to between 85 AD and 135 AD. They said that it actually could be earlier than that because of the type of wood and tree that it was made from. It could have been a tree that had died decades earlier, so it could have been a little earlier than that. But it puts it right in that Book of Mormon time frame. And so you wonder, who is this famous individual? Who is this individual that received this prestigious burial? Again, the stone mound was about um, 40 to 50 feet high, around 180 to 200 feet in diameter. And then this burial is at the bottom. Now, when the stone mound was excavated, it was excavated in 1860. And when it was excavated in 1860, that was when this stone was found. Sorry, what looked at this artifact called the Decalogue stone. It is made of stone, and it was inside of a stone casing. So this top and this was inside, and this was sort of acting like a box. And this had a little ridge and a slot to seal together, and so it looked like a stone. But it turned out that it was a stone that had been hollowed and cleared out so that when it was opened inside, it had this what's called the Decalogue stone, and written around it in Hebrew. It's a form of Hebrew called block Hebrew. It has the Ten Commandments. It also has the appearance of an individual with lettering that most interpret to say Moses. Could potentially say Messiah, but Moshe. It's generally interpreted to be Moses since it's the Ten Commandments. And this was found in November of 1860. It was found by a man named David Wyrick. Now, David Wyrick was also the individual who found the what's called the Newark Holy Stone, which also had some Hebrew writing on it. And this was found next to the Newark earthworks, in particular next to the octagon, if you're familiar with the Newark earthworks. And that was found in the summer of 1860. So David Wyrick found the Newark Holy Stone, which had some Hebrew writing on it, in the summer of 1860 near the octagon earthworks in Newark. And then in November, when they did the excavation of the Great Stone Mound, also called the Reservoir Stone Mound, that's when the Decalogue stone was found. I do think the Decalogue stone is authentic, but the scientific consensus generally considers it to be a forgery. They think that Wyrick forged it. There's a good question about whether Wyrick had the knowledge and ability to do that kind of a forgery, but he was known to be somebody that believed that the Native Americans were the lost tribes of Israel. So in that sense, he did potentially have a motivation in that he was a believer that the Native Americans were lost tribes of Israel. And that motivation is one of the key things that people use to say, well, he must have forged it since he was the finder of both of those stones. In addition, with the stones, there was also a stone little bowl or cup. Okay, like I said, in this particular video, we don't have time to go into the Decalogue stone. I want to do a separate video at some point looking at the science and the arguments around that as to whether it's really authentic or not. I do think it's authentic, but that would be a separate discussion. Okay, so anyway, that's gives you a little bit, and this is where the Reservoir Stone Mound, the remnants left of it yet so far, that's left so far. I'll just note that that stone mound, in addition to having the burial, I noted that the platform had sort of was lined with a fabric that sort of resembled old carpeting. So that's another thing where there are a few different examples of the Hopewell using fabrics. And some people say, oh no, the ancient Native Americans, they didn't have fabrics, but there's multiple examples of them using fabrics. But unfortunately, the fabric doesn't last very long. So when it has been found, it generally is destroyed. In this particular one, it said it was so fragile that it crumbled at the slightest touch. Okay. And this again shows remains of the mound. It's just below I-70. Let's go back to that map. So the way it was mapped is that there's an old mapping of it, whereas just southeast of Jacksontown, where this road then bends, and then to the east of that is the stone mound. And then it's also shown that it's currently I-70 was later built, and it's just below there. So that's how we get the location of it. It's just below I-70 here. This is that old Jackson town, and then down here, and this is where that stone mound was located, which is again just about 10 miles south of the Newark earthworks. We'll go ahead and stop share there. All right, so that gives you some information about some of the sites located in that Newark area. We'll have to do a separate video going into the Newark earthworks, since there's so much to talk about there in terms of the Great Circle, the Octagon, what they mean, and so forth. Also, we'll need a separate video to go into the Decalogue stone and the Newark Holy Stones about whether those are authentic. But what this does is it kind of gives you some context of that Newark area so that you can see it was this highly inhabited area. It was desirable for the source of flint, which was used everywhere. And then it had those fortifications nearby that fit the right time frame and descriptions for the Captain Moroni type fortifications. I do think the Newark location, it fits the Book of Mormon, and these were Book of Mormon people. I look forward to your thoughts and comments. Thanks.